Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, wrapping up their second scrimmage and last scrimmage of fall camp. And as Clemson continues to roll through their fall camp, you continue to hear buzz around kind of some new faces, some faces that we didn't really talk about through the duration of this offseason, but guys that sound like they are going to be contributors for this Clemson program in 2024. Want to get into some of those names that, at least in my opinion, are kind of catching my eyes, getting me excited heading into 2024. But I think the most important takeaway, and really a takeaway that we've kind of talked about extensively over the last couple of weeks and months, is just a little bit better of a chemistry feeling within this Clemson offense. Where you go back to the 2023 year, Cade Klubnik, obviously a first-year starter, new offense in Garrett Riley, wide receivers that were banged up not only in the 2023 season, but banged up kind of through the duration of the offseason. You could tell that this Clemson offense was a new offense. You could tell that Cade Klubnik was a new starter. You could tell that he did not get many reps with a lot of those wide receivers on the outside. Heading into 2024, it sounds like that chemistry is being built. I mean, last year, 12 months ago, Adam Randall, Antonio Williams dealing with injuries, not even participating in a lot of the fall camp practices. You fast forward to heading into 2024, and Cade Klubnik's up there talking about getting extra reps after practice with guys like Antonio Williams and Adam Randall. I think that's a massive storyline for this Clemson offense. I think a lot of people look at this Clemson offense and say, you didn't make any additions in the transfer portal. No way this Clemson offense gets better heading into 2024, just kind of discounting the fact that, one, this was a new offense, but I think more importantly, this was a very young Clemson offense, right? Cade Klubnik was a true sophomore last year. Adam Randall was a sophomore. Antonio Williams was a sophomore. Tyler Brown was a freshman. This team can just get better because they have some talent, and then they just get better heading into 2024. That's kind of what we've been focusing on for this Clemson offense, and it sounds like that's kind of coming to fruition during fall camp. Want to get into some new faces that we haven't talked about throughout offseason that are also stepping up. Before we get into it, as always, massive shout out to the Clemson fans. This has been a program that it's been a blast to talk about. We just talked about the first scrimmage a couple of days ago, the amount of support that the Clemson fans show to the fellas. It's been absolutely amazing. We can't thank you guys enough. If you all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear how you guys are feeling, particularly about this Clemson offense heading into 2024. And without further ado, let's get into this one now. Yeah, it sounds like Clemson had another good day on offense in the scrimmage. I think that's how you want it to go if you're a Clemson fan, because I look at this Clemson program and say, I'm not too concerned about this Clemson defense. I think this is going to be a top 10 defense in the country, potentially even a top 5 defense in the country if they are able to stay healthy. If this Clemson team as a whole reaches their potential in 2024, it has everything to do with this offense taking a massive step from 2023. So if there's a way that we want this scrimmage, if we're Clemson fans, to play out, we want this Clemson offense to sound like it's putting it together. And, that's kind of exactly what we're hearing from this Clemson offense. Now, we talked about Cade Klubnik, we talked about Adam Randall, Antonio Williams, kind of building a little bit more of that chemistry. The name that I want to shout out that we haven't talked about really throughout this whole offseason is true freshman tight end Christian Bentancur. I mean, we've talked a ton about Jake Bringenstool, a guy that we think is one of the better tight ends, if not the best tight end in the ACC in 2024. We've been looking for pass catchers to step up. No, I didn't really highlight Christian Bentancur for a couple of different reasons. One, just flies under the radar in that Clemson 2024 class where he committed to Clemson way back in the day, didn't take any other visits, didn't monkey around with any other schools. So I feel like a lot of people just kind of slotted him away and just forgot about him in the 2024 class. He's come on campus and just kind of has dominated. I mean, the way Dabo Swinney talks about Christian Bentancur as being, quote, maybe the best tight end we've ever signed at Clemson. There's been a lot of good Clemson tight ends that have gone through this program, including one you have on the roster with Jake Bringenstool, a guy like Davis Allen. If Christian Bentancur is that good, I mean, that's just another pass catcher difference maker that we are adding to this Clemson offense in the 2024 season. Now, do I think Christian Bentancur starts at tight end for Clemson? No, probably not, because you have a guy like Jake Bringenstool. But if Clemson does go to some two tight end sets, it wouldn't shock me from what I'm hearing out of fall camp that I mean, Christian Bentancur might be one of those guys, and this kid is a matchup nightmare. And you look at 6'4", he moves. You go back to the high school film. That's what I did when I started hearing some buzz around him. I said, all right, what was he like as a senior in high school? This was a matchup nightmare. This was a guy that you turn on the film and say, oh, he's 220 plus pounds, moving like a wide receiver on the film. This is a guy that's going to give a lot of opposing defenders problems. Kind of a similar story we talked about with Jake Bringenstool, where there's just not that many defenders that have the physical traits to deal with Christian Bentancur, whether it's the size and physicality, whether it's the movement skills and speed. We've been looking for difference makers to step up on offense. Christian Bentancur might be a guy for Clemson specifically in that red zone area that can provide some juice to this Clemson offense. I think the second storyline to have is that center position I'm starting to feel better and better about. Now, we haven't had a center one named. We might not know who that's going to be until week 1 against Georgia, whether it's Ryan Linthicum, whether it's Harris Sewell, whether it's Trent Howard. The more you read about how Dabo Swinney talks about that center position, the more you kind of get the feel that, hey, we got 3 really solid candidates at that center position. Whoever wins that spot, we feel like is going to be pretty good. And then we look at the rest of the offensive line and say, we're feeling pretty good about this Clemson offensive line. I can't tell you how many people I hear in the national media get up, talk about that Clemson-Georgia matchup and say, yeah, Clemson won't be able to deal with Georgia on the defensive line. That's not a shot at Georgia's defensive line. I think Georgia's defensive line is going to be really good. I just think not enough people are giving credit to how good this Clemson offensive line can be in 2024. It sounds like they are winning the day. I wouldn't say consistently, but they're winning against Clemson's defensive line, which we all know is going to be really good. I think this Clemson offensive line kind of, flying under the radar. And I think the biggest takeaway is it's deep. I mean, you look at, okay, we feel pretty good about the starting 5. You have a guy like Colin Sadler who could play left tackle, could play right tackle, could play guard. He's a really good utility guy that we trust as kind of being that 6th man. And then you look at Trent Howard and Harris Sewell and say, I think Clemson would feel very comfortable with either of those guys starting at any of the positions on the inside of the offensive line. So there are, legitimately 8-9 guys. I would throw in Elijah Thurman, who Dabo Swinney says, we're just not going to be able to redshirt. He's too good to redshirt as a true freshman. Not only do we feel good about the Clemson starting 5, we feel pretty good about the depth of the offensive line, which is a really important conversation where you go back to Clemson last year with all the injuries, they just didn't have that depth. They had to play some guys that, for lack of better terms, were liabilities out there. Guys like Mays last year. Clemson's got an offensive line that they can rotate, and I think they're pretty deep. Now, you go to the defensive side of the football, I think my biggest takeaway is Vic Burley back and healthy. Vic Burley's a guy that kind of flies under the radar as, according to 24/7 Sports, was the number 1 recruit Clemson signed in their class in 2023. Now, Peter Woods and TJ Parker were also very coveted recruits and obviously played very well as freshmen. I feel like I don't know if Clemson fans have forgot about Vic Burley, but a lot of people aren't talking about Vic Burley as a guy that can contribute for Clemson on the inside of the defensive line. We always felt pretty good about the depth on the inside. I mean, DeMonte Capar, Peyton Page, Trey Williams, all really good football players. What if you add Vic Burley into that rotation? Now we went from, hey, we're pretty deep on the defensive line to we're very, very deep, specifically on the inside of the defensive line. That's a massive story. Again, you go back to what made Michigan so good on the defensive line in the 2023 season. Yes, they had legitimate NFL talent, which Clemson certainly does. But Michigan was so deep on the defensive line when they rotated their 2s and 3s in, there was no drop-off on the defensive line. If Vic Burley can emerge as a guy at, 6'4", 330 pounds, I mean, that's just another guy that Clemson's continuing to rotate in. I think the line of scrimmage play, I already thought it was going to be really good. To hear Vic Burley starting to put it together, and it might take kind of a couple of games early for Vic Burley to kind of get his feet under him. I think that's a massive storyline for Clemson on the defensive line. Again, this kid's super talented. A lot of people forget about him because of TJ Parker and Peter Woods. And the more and more I read about this Clemson defensive line with the emergence of someone like Vic Burley, this defensive line is going to be really good. Now, another guy I want to shout out, Sammy Brown. Sammy Brown is tough because I don't know how much he's going to play over guys like Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz, who I think are a very, very good linebacker duo for Clemson. That being said, Sammy Brown can do so many different things. Clemson's going to figure out a way to get him on the field, and Dabo Swinney probably summed it up great in the spring we were kind of surprised that we didn't hear a ton from Sammy Brown as a true freshman, this guy that was the best recruit that Clemson signed in the 2024 class. We kind of expected him to come in and, pop a lot of eyes and kind of garner a lot of attention. Not as much attention and buzz was created around Sammy Brown as I think a lot of us expected during that spring practice session. Dabo Swinney gets up and said, Sammy Brown was still learning the defense. At that linebacker spot, it is a lot more about, can you diagnose what's happening in front of you? Can you have a strong grasp of the defense? Then you can start playing physically and fast. Sammy Brown sounds to be grasping this Clemson defense, and now he's going to be able to play physically and fast. We had no question marks about Clemson or Sammy Brown being a guy that physically could step on a football field year one and dominate. We know he has that. We call him Captain America for a reason. This kid is about as gifted as it gets at that off-ball linebacker spot. That being said, he's got to put it together between the years. It sounds like he's doing that. And so whether it's Sammy Brown coming in, potentially rushing off the edge, I think there are ways you can use Sammy Brown now that he's grasped this Clemson defense as kind of an X factor within this Clemson defense. Now, the last position I want to talk about really quick is the cornerback. I should say secondary position in general, dealing with some injuries, right? You have Shelton Lewis banged up. You have a guy like Jaden Lucas banged up. I feel okay about Shelton Lewis. And Dabo Swinney keeps saying, hey, day-to-day, we know what Shelton Lewis is. We think he can be a really good cornerback. Jaden Lucas is the guy that I'm looking at and saying I would like to see him get healthy sooner rather than later. When Jaden Lucas is on the field, he's a great cornerback. He just hasn't been on the field during his first 2 years at Clemson. To hear him struggling with injuries again is probably a little bit concerning for Clemson fans just because of the injury history that he's had. I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for Jaden Lucas's injury report. And I get playing it safe with Jaden Lucas, and that is probably what Clemson is doing, right? And there's not a ton of information on the Jaden Lucas injury. We're probably saying, hey, we know what Jaden Lucas can do. We're going to try to get him healthy for that week one matchup against Georgia. I'm going to be continuing to look at Jaden Lucas because if you do get Jaden Lucas, back healthy, I think him and Avian Terrell are an elite boundary cornerback duo. And then you can get maybe creative in terms of how you want to use Khalil Barnes or Shelton Lewis, potentially kick one of those back to safety. I think Jaden Lucas is a big storyline, a guy that obviously Clemson's defense is going to be better with a healthy Jaden Lucas. We'll see how that plays out. But, outside of that, Clemson is pretty dang healthy, at least in comparison to the 2023 fall camp. And so we're feeling pretty good about Clemson heading into 2024. But some of these new names, Vic Burley on the defensive line, Christian Bentancur at that tight end position, I think that should really excite Clemson fans. We'll wrap it up there. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.